In an internal note, this is from Phil Stewart, chief national security reporter for Reuters, with a fat scoop. This comes after the footage was filmed by a U.S. soldier during an Iranian missile barrage targeting the Muwafaq Salti air base in Jordan. CENTCOM commander in an internal note says videos like this by troops can help Iran with targeting during missile and drone attacks. Comes as sources tell Reuters some deployed personnel could soon be ordered to surrender their phones. Now, it's funny because this is a successful strike. And clearly, if they are capable of targeting whatever they were targeting there, visual confirmation from phone footage like this, it's not going to change the dynamic for Iran because, one, they're capable of precise targeting now.
Violent clashes in the Middle East and concerns that the pause in the fighting between the U.S. and Iran is over. American and Saudi forces say they launched precision strikes against militias backed by Iran, and Tehran fired ballistic missiles toward American forces. U.S. commanders call it an attempted surprise attack. Charlie D'Agata is in Jordan with the very latest. Charlie, good morning.
Good morning to you, Vlad. 4 days of relative calm was shattered overnight with those two dramatic developments, that surprise attack aimed at U.S. forces and new U.S. airstrikes in a joint operation with Saudi Arabia for the first time. This might seem like, well, here we go again, but this is a serious escalation. So video shows attacks on Iranian-backed militias in Iraq in direct retaliation for drone strikes aimed at Saudi Arabian oil facilities. An Iraqi paramilitary coalition says the strikes killed and wounded multiple people and caused damage to buildings and other property. Then there's this surprise ballistic missile attack here in Jordan. Military sources tell us 5 of those missiles were intercepted. Remember, this is where those 3 U.S. soldiers were killed. So this isn't symbolic. This isn't a gesture, U.S. Central Command told us. This was another attempt to kill American troops. So fighting had been on hold to give diplomacy a chance. Now, in the middle of all of this volatility, President Trump met privately with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu for the first time since this war began. Netanyahu described it as one of the best conversations, but earlier, President Trump slammed the prime minister for exaggerating Iran's nuclear threat, saying, quote, I don't
level
need
12
Bibi
hype
to
train.
tell me that
3 more
because
levels.
He wants me to stay involved. Natalie?
Charlie D'Agata in Jordan, thank you so much.
President Trump speaking to Fox just moments ago about the U.S.-Iran conflict. Trey Yates
Yeah,
says
he
the
mad.
information.
He big mad.
Trey, what did the president tell you?
This was really funny. He's like, we're going to bomb the fucking shit out of them. We're so mad.
Yeah, guys, good morning. President Trump reacting to that Iranian attack on U.S. forces overnight in Jordan. President Trump tells Fox News about Iran, we are going to beat the effing S out of them. He went on to say, we'll be hitting them hard. They're going to get a beating. So clearly the United States is going to respond to what the president described as a surprise attack. He says U.S. forces had just minutes to shoot down these incoming Iranian ballistic missiles. The president says he has reviewed video of the shoot down, and it was U.S. forces conducting this operation to defend that area. He said it was real time. They were calling out coordinates and ensuring that none of this incoming Iranian fire got through. I also asked the president about those U.S. and Saudi airstrikes against Iran-backed Iraqi Shia militias overnight. He says those strikes were coordinated with the Iraqi government. He called these Iran-backed militias a cancer on the world and says he is considering additional warnings against Iranian proxies and their link to the Iranian regime. The president also talked about his meeting yesterday with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu in the Oval Office. He says it was a great meeting, adding he understands now. It appears that the relationship...
Bro thinks he's lethal shooter. I understand it now. Bro, you are not lethal shooter, okay? You are not lethal shooter. You don't understand shit.
Between President Trump and the Israeli Prime Minister is strengthening. And again, the president called that meeting in the Oval great. In terms of possible talks with the Iranian regime, the president says we're going to let them keep talking.
Level 12 hype train.
Remember, the Iranians came to President Trump after 13 straight days of U.S. bombing against Iran.
1 minute remaining at 30% level. 12 hype train. It seems like we are capable of carrying the flame, but maybe we are not capable of getting to a tank top stream.
Asking to meet about the Strait of Hormuz and their broader nuclear ambitions. And those talks are taking place as we speak behind the scenes. And then this surprise attack launched against U.S. forces overnight. And again, President Trump telling Fox News we are going to beat the effing S out of them, and that U.S. strikes will take place against Iran in response to the surprise attack overnight against U.S. forces in Jordan. Guys.
What's intriguing, too, is we understand the previous attacks were with Saudi Arabia. You know, this whole thing started with epic fury with Israel.
Amy on.
Do you sense that there might be a comprehensive plan in place or working on it?
It's
Myanmar, Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, UAE,
Mr. Fancy Penguin.
Various times have taken unilateral action on their
own.
What
Kami says,
along with the idea.
with another 20.
It's absolutely possible because the Iranian plan here backfired.
20 seconds remaining, almost done with level 12. Level 12, 20 seconds remaining.
Coalition that is now targeting Iranian proxies in the region and even Iranian territory. And we saw that last night on display. Saudi Arabia publicly admitting that they are participating in strikes against Iranian proxies in Iraq alongside U.S. forces. And other countries in the...
We made it to level 13 hype train, ladies and gentlemen. I also have an update on this lesser-known guy, Benjamin Netanyahu. Benjamin Netanyahu standing among Republicans has collapsed by 33 points since May. In May, Netanyahu was plus 47. In June, he was plus 24. And now he is plus 14. Now he's still in the green. But even the fucking cult is breaking with the real American president. And maybe perhaps they want the actual American president, President Donald Trump, to come back into the seat of power. I don't know. Guzzo24, thank you for the 20 gifted subs. We're at level 13 hype train, only 2 more levels remaining for a tank top stream. You denigrated the sanctity of the hype train promises last month. You can't act surprised. I mean, the tank top one is an easy one. Floof the Fox.
Gulf have participated in limited capacity against the Iranians, targeting some of these coastal areas around the city of Bandar Abbas next to the Persian Gulf, where many of those U.S. strikes took place. And remember, when we spoke with President Trump earlier this year during Operation Epic Fury, he said he was most surprised by the fact that the Iranians were targeting these countries that were uninvolved, that were not striking Iran at the time. And so again, what Iran has done here by targeting these Gulf countries is actually building this informal coalition that is now being used to pressure the Iranian regime. The question remains if these talks will lead to some sort of agreement.
4-2.
But again, President Trump tells Fox News there will be a U.S. response to this surprise attack overnight against U.S. forces in Jordan.
Trey Yanks just getting off the phone with the president. Trey, thank you very much for the exclusive reporting.
Thanks, Trey.
Be sure to like.
It's funny that Trey Yanks is like the last remaining Trump loyalist at this point, which is a definite fall from grace for Trey. He was far more critical of Israel back in the day before they made him the chief foreign correspondent for Fox News. Tel Aviv Trey is now the biggest Trump dick rider at Fox News. That's part of the reason why Trump loves giving him interviews where he says dumb shit like, oh, I'm going to bully the fuck out of Iran. Updates. CENTCOM commander in an internal note, this is from Phil Stewart, chief national security reporter for Reuters, with a fat scoop. This comes after the footage was filmed by a U.S. soldier during an Iranian missile barrage targeting the Muwafaq Salti air base in Jordan. CENTCOM commander in an internal note says videos like this by troops can help Iran with targeting during missile and drone attacks. Comes as sources tell Reuters some deployed personnel could soon be ordered to surrender their phones. Now, it's funny because this is a successful strike. And clearly, if they are capable of targeting whatever they were targeting there, visual confirmation from phone footage like this, it's not going to change the dynamic for Iran because, one, they're capable of precise targeting now. And two, if they're capable of precise targeting, they're probably capable of seeing the impact zone with the same satellite imagery that allowed them to engage in precise targeting. So it's still funny that they are, engaging in more operational security, though. Too little, too late. Cooper says Iran benefits from being able to see the success or failure of its strikes in near real time by searching news reports or online posts by journalists referencing reactions, photos, and footage from the cell phones of our troops. The direct, unavoidable cost of this open source intelligence could be measured in the lives of American service members and civilian residents in targeted Gulf countries. Cooper also says Iran would normally have a tough time determining the success or failure of its strikes thanks to things like the U.S. military's electronic jamming or other tactics used in war zones. Tamanna! Thank you for the 50. Almost done. 10 seconds remaining on level 13. 10 seconds remaining on level 13. 9 seconds remaining. 88%. Oh my God. With a last ditch effort from Blonde Bob and Dijo Kujula with the 50 bones. We are now at level 14, only one level away from a tank top stream. Promises made, promises kept. Promises made, promises kept. The only way to fight back against cooter maxing is by gun maxing. Just watch this real quick to hype everyone up. Look at this guy shamelessly engaging in self-promotion. An anonymous user, holy fuck. Amy Leon, thank you for the 50 gifted. Killer Diller, Moswin. We are at 76% at level 14. 76% at level 14, ladies and gentlemen. 79% at level 14. Tank top stream is imminent. Give us your best Sav Cannon pose. Tank top suit, make it happen? No. I'm not. Tamana, Blonde Bob, another anonymous gifter. Butterfan. Oh my God, we did it. Level 14. Level 14. Tank top streams are back. Tank top streams are back. Hasan Piker promises oiled up chest, armpit, and feet stream at level 15 hype train. That's not what I promised. I just said tank top. You are arriving at ridiculous conclusions. Okay? You're arriving at, that is an exaggeration. That was never promised. Okay? That was never promised. Wear this instead? No. Level 15. Level 15 hype train. We arrived at it. We're going to do a tank top. Promise is made. I will keep that promise. Open your purses. 10 more levels for a workout stream? Yeah, that's not going to happen. I don't think we're going to get to level 25, but I will do a workout stream as well if we get to level 25. Bro, oil stream for the Strait of Hormuz. Yeah, oil up with the oil transiting through the Strait of Hormuz. Tank top stream with Norm? No, I'm not going to wear a tank top when I'm interviewing Norm Finkelstein after years and years. You're out of your dang mind. Yeah, Ken Klippenstein interviewed Francesca Hong, by the way, who had some beast mode opinions. We're going to get to that in a second. But how much of a surprise was Iran's surprise attack? Iranian war briefing with Sean Bell.
152 of President Trump's 4 to 6 week war in Iran. After a relatively quiet few days, last night was intense military activity again. But what was the surprise about Iran's surprise attack? Overnight last night, we heard that 3 oil tankers were attacked in the Strait of Hormuz. It looks like that they were passing in the southern route, which is very close to the Omani coastline, supported by American ships and in direct contravention of the clear route by Iran, which is operating up to the north. Now, every time that's happened in the past, that's acted as the catalyst for a tit-for-tat exchange between America and Iran. That's exactly what happened last night. As a result of that, America attacked a series of military targets around the Strait of Hormuz, deliberately designed to try to reduce Iran's ability to strike back and to strike commercial shipping. Meanwhile, the Iranians, in response to those attacks, therefore targeted the region, went across and targeted American forces in Jordan with a series of ballistic missile strikes. Now, Central Command have said that all of those ballistic missiles were intercepted. The challenge, of course, is that what's actually happening here is that there's a regional conflict that's expanding well beyond the boundaries of Iran. There are a number of Iranian-backed militia groups operating in Iraq. Some of them have been attacking American facilities and Saudi Arabian oil facilities. There have been 30 drone attacks in the last 72 hours. Central Command announced that there have been a number of attacks
Level 15 at 1 minute
Iraq,
remaining.
targeting military facilities there.
Level 15 at 1 minute remaining. Level 15 at 1 minute remaining. 1 minute warning for level 15. If we get to 25, I will do a workout stream. I'll try to do it with Abdul. I don't know if we'll have time, but an anonymous gifter is gifting 500 tier 500. Holy fuck. We got a horny ass anonymous gifter level 15 complete. What the fuck? Almost level 16 complete. Jesus Christ. There is a gooner amongst our ranks. We got Oilers back in the fold. Moose Knuckle stream at level 20? No, I'm not going to do a Moose Knuckle stream, dude. Lindsey Graham gifting from the grave? Okay, maybe we will reach level 25. I was wrong. I was wrong about this. Kaisenak could never.
The Iraqis claim that 20 people were killed and 32 were injured. On behalf of the Crown Prince, the Saudi foreign minister said they didn't want to see any form of escalation in the region, but they would act in response to any form of aggression in those most recent periods of attack. So why has there been a sudden resumption in these attacks? Well, last night it's quite difficult to see who struck who first and the sequencing of events, but America saying that Iran had conducted a surprise attack against America made it implied that actually Iran was operating proactively. But the challenge is this is all about the Strait of Hormuz. It's all about control. It's all about the Memorandum of Understanding and Clause 5, which effectively gave Iran responsibility for the safe passage of vessels through those straits. Every time America tries to force commercial vessels through that new southern route, it precipitates an escalation of violence, and that continues. So what actually is the American strategy here? Well, it seems to be able to use American force to try and defeat Iran, trying to drive it to the negotiating table and a position of weakness. The challenge is, as day 152, that doesn't appear to be working.
I like that Sky News has to repeat the same video every day now. I mean, that's everyone. I feel like I'm always... I try to make it as interesting as possible, but it's impossible not to be repetitive on this because it's the same song and dance every time. Friday night, Trump says, after market close, Trump says he's going to do something insane. He's going to nuke Iran. And then come Sunday night, right before markets open, Trump says, oh, Iran is begging for a ceasefire. This has happened for the last 160 fucking days. Literally, with a brief pause in between when there was a MOU, which they were forced to follow through on because there was an imminent crisis with the strategic petroleum reserves. Fuck a tank top post, meat coward. Okay, chill. Level 16 hype train, 1 minute remaining. Level 16 hype train at 92%. Level 16 hype train, we're about to hit level 17 hype train with 1 minute remaining. When will you interview Norm? We'll take leave from work. Okay, that's insane, Miss Pickles. You shouldn't take leave from work just to listen to me interview Norm. But it's tomorrow. Level 16, level 17 hype train. Tank top stream with Norm Finkelstein? No, I'm not going to do a tank top stream with Norm Finkelstein. I will do it on the weekend, which is when I will be in Michigan. I'll bring in a fucking tank top to Michigan.
Well, what's happening? What's the Iranian strategy here? Well, the Iranian people are definitely suffering as a result of this war. Inflation is high, supplies are low, but the Iranian leadership, particularly the IRGC, see this as a once-in-a-generational opportunity to move from a pariah state to a regional power, potentially even in control of the Strait of Hormuz. All they've got to do to achieve their strategic objectives is to outlast America, and they will deliver strategic success. So, of course, where does this leave us in the whole process? Well, when President Trump first started this war, he announced it would be a 4 to 6 week war, and the much anticipated and crucial midterm elections in America were many, many months away. However, we're now on day 152 of the war. There's less than 100 days left before those elections. Crucially, America does not like this war in Iran. President Trump's personal popularity has dropped. This is not the legacy that either President Trump or the Republican Party would have anticipated.
You know, nobody was able to bring people together quite like my...
Define Netanyahu promised to go to New York after Mamdani threats. Yes, the real president went to Sean Hannity, by the way. Here's, before we get to that, last part of the situation monitoring. Hardest part of 3-day war was the first 5 years. What the fuck is this? Using experimental quantum lip reading AI classified DARPA. Here's exactly what he said. Okay, dude, come on. Come on. Crazy a foreign PM can do this. A foreign PM warns the United States that he has deployed armed forces on his soil to act against this law and against this law as police and army. Netanyahu says Israel has special forces ready if arrested. Vows New York City visit. Yeah, I don't know if he realizes what that sounds like. I don't know if he realizes what that means. I mean, that's insane. That's an insane statement, but I guess it's fucking beast mode. We're at level 17 hype train with 2 minutes remaining. 2 minutes remaining. APAC Super PAC adds 5 million to Michigan Senate primary, pushing total above 30 million. You know what I have to say to that?
What? gives.
But of course, AIPAC is doing that for a good reason, because
Israel comes to me in my dreams.
Yep. Mamdani is now formally a part of Netanyahu's digital campaign and tough re-election bid. Here's what I wrote last week. Confrontation with New York's outspoken anti-Zionist mayor could allow Netanyahu to cast himself once again as Israel's defender against international efforts to isolate and punish the country. I don't think so. I mean, good luck. Good luck to Bibi on that. It's not going to work, I don't think. Prove the old man wrong, get to level 25? I don't think we can get to level 25. We're at 1 minute remaining. Or less than 1 minute remaining. 1 minute remaining at 11% at level 17. I don't think we're getting past the level 17 chatters. I just got out of a work meeting. Are you still doing tank top stream at level 20? No, I said I was going to do a tank top stream already and at 15, and we passed 15. I said I would do a workout stream at 25, but we're not getting there. It's not happening. My PBS prediction is that within a year, HasanAbi will build travel Pelican to include some kind of soundboard. Probably not, because the Pelican is super tight right now as it is. It's like it's filled to the brim. So I would have to get like a larger Pelican, which would not be carry-on sized. So I'm not going to do that most likely. I mean, I guess maybe, probably not. Level 17 show hole. No, that's not happening. All right. New estimates of American PAC-3 and THAAD anti-ballistic missile interceptor stockpiles in American inventory from the CSIS. Roughly a third of pre-war Patriot interceptors are estimated to remain. This is not good. Patriot and THAAD interceptors remaining in U.S. inventory pre-war was 2,330. At the ceasefire point was 1,030. Today, July 27th, it's at 759 to 827. THAAD pre-war was 452. At ceasefire was at 232 to 262. Today is at 234 to 278. Estimated inventories today account for additional interceptor use and new deliveries since the April 8th ceasefire. THAAD deliveries during the ceasefire outpaced estimated use over the same period, resulting in higher inventories today than in April. Patriot calculations include the latest MSC variant and PAC-3s. Several hundred PAC-2s not represented in the chart are estimated to remain in U.S. inventory. Which, once again, means Ukraine is not getting any fucking Patriot missiles. That's what it means. Oh, hype train over. That's what that means. How the fuck is Ukraine receiving any PAC-3 Patriot missiles that they are demanding from the American side to the tune of 300 as Zelensky demanded today? If America continues its war with Iran, why would Ukraine try to enter the Iranian theater, only extending the Iranian conflict if they were successful, right? When all of those fucking Patriot missiles are being utilized in the Gulf, mostly in Israel. As we've been reporting since April, the stockpile issue at this stage is one that largely centers around concerns the U.S. military may not have enough munitions for the next conflict. Analysts and sources have consistently warned that continued fighting with Iran could deplete stockpiles to the point it could impact the U.S. military's ability to fight with China or even North Korea in the future. It's actually worse than that. I don't think it's just for potential conflict with China or Russia. I think it's worse than that. I think they don't have enough for this conflict. That's the real secret. The real secret is not that, oh, we won't have enough for China. It's not like we're going to fucking wage a war with China. That's insane. If you think tomorrow China decides, fuck it, we're going beast mode, we're going to militarily invade Taiwan, if you think America is going to then shift their priority to defend Taiwan, you are the most delusional person on the planet. Yeah, Ukraine is trying to make it seem to Trump that supporting Ukraine is part of fighting against Iran. It's a game of jingling keys to keep Trump's attention. I know, but it's a very dumb thing to do because if successful, it only extends the conflict, which makes it less likely that he will receive a single Patriot missile. That's what I'm saying. Any day that goes by where America is more invested in Israel, which is what America will always do, Israel's a primary focus, is a day where Ukraine gets no attention whatsoever and no weapons whatsoever. You're telling me this doesn't make you want to defend Israel? Yes, for the boomer cons, it does. I'm turned up and turned on. The dogs are out. OBGYN stanced up. cooter for the rest of the world to see. This makes me say,
Israel comes to me in my dreams.
Straight up. Anyway, on that note, Trita Parsi is going to be on the broadcast in 1 minute. I don't think he's here yet, but he will be on in 1 minute. I'm gonna text him real quick, see if he's still doing it. Ask Trita about this. What is it? Okay, Trita is here. Hello, Trita Parsi, Executive Vice President of Quincy Institute, is in the building, ladies and gentlemen. Hold on, let me change the. There it is.
How you doing?
Welcome back. Apologies for yesterday. We had to watch perhaps the most boring Wisconsin gubernatorial debate that's taking place. But we got a candidate in there, Francesca Hong. I don't know if you're familiar with her. She's a wonderful DSA candidate, running and actually killing it right now. She's got like 44%, freaking out the establishment a lot. But in any case, Shrita, you're back, and the news are not so good. And I am very excited to have you. Thank you for coming on. We got a real situation evolving. As of yesterday, Iran actually changed the pace of the theater by doing a non-retaliatory strike for the first time in the last 160 plus days, by striking at U.S. assets in the Jordanian air bases, the U.S. air bases in Jordan. And Trump has since refused to retaliate, as a matter of fact. So very interesting predicament. I wanted to hear your assessment on where things are going and if you still feel confident that there is any opportunity for peace.
Look, there always is opportunity still for peace, I think. Although I agree with you fully, it is looking very, very bad. The trajectory has shifted dramatically. Let me start off by sharing just my thought analysis as to why I think the Iranians did this. I think this really surprised the U.S. They did not expect this. And it was, from the U.S. perspective, highly provocative to do it while Netanyahu and Zelensky are in Washington, D.C. It adds additional pressure onto Trump. So the fact that the U.S. hasn't responded yet, and I'm not 100% sure if that is the case. There was some sort of attack early on, I heard. But either way, I don't find that very likely to be a lasting situation. So why did the Iranians then do this? There's been a lot of speculation that this is because they lost faith in diplomacy with the United States. They're trying to test to see how strong Trump's resolve is, all of these different things. And I think there are probably elements of truth in that. But the way I see it, I would limit it to essentially three key reasons. First one is oil prices have come down. Despite the fact that the strait is closed, even during this informal ceasefire, oil prices has come down, which then creates a problem for the Iranians because there was never a negotiated ceasefire. It's just that the U.S. stopped fighting. The U.S. has stopped bombing. And if it is so that the U.S. can decide when there's a ceasefire and when there isn't one by simply bombing or not bombing, and the Iranians just have to follow suit, then that creates a scenario in which Trump will always have an option, a rather costless option, in which he can just go from diplomacy to fighting back to ceasefire, and the Iranians would just have to adjust to that. So an informal ceasefire is completely unacceptable to the Iranians, but particularly now when they saw that oil prices were coming down, it meant that the economic pressure on Trump was reducing much faster than the Iranians thought. I don't think this is the main reason. The second reason is, I think the Iranians wanted to showcase that they are willing to take preemptive actions against the United States because they believe the U.S. was preparing an attack. They claimed that there was intelligence and maneuvers in the U.S. with new assets coming to the region that suggested that the U.S. was in the direction of an attack. And by taking preemptive measures, they're trying to signal to the United States that if you think that there's like a massive escalatory step that you can take, a larger war. You hear Trump constantly say that, we're just going to go at Iran much harder than we did before. So if there is a belief that a bigger war is in your favor, the Iranians are trying to deter the U.S. And I know this may sound paradoxical, by showing their willingness to attack first. Now, of course, there's a huge risk with that at the end, and we'll talk about that. And the third thing, I think, is the combination of a couple of factors here, which really puts a fine print on this. I think the Iranians have come to the conclusion that Trump will never commit himself to diplomacy unless he no longer has a military option. And by showing their willingness to go to war with the US, by preemptively attacking the US, they're trying to tell him, you don't have that option because you think that that option is going to be easy for you, but we're willing to fight you. And only when Trump has concluded that he doesn't have a military option will he start becoming sincere and genuine about diplomacy. So the pathway to a deal is not, or to peace, is not a deal. The pathway to it is to first eliminate the military option, force a realization that only diplomacy, meaning no combination of diplomacy and military action, will work. And then at that point, you can actually make a deal feasible and you can make a deal durable. One second, let me just pick up this. I think this is the second time this has happened while I'm on your show.
I was going to ask if you could fix your audio source as well.
Okay.
Because I don't think it's coming from your headphones right now. It's a little bit low. Potentially.
You are correct.
Yeah.
Okay, it should be better now. Is it better?
Yes, it's much better now. Yeah, much louder.
I'm going to get a professional mic one of these days.
Yeah, no, it's all good. So yeah, I agree with I agree with your assessment. What do you think this says about the American conversations that have been taking place in Western media, specifically about the quote unquote chaos within the Iranian governance structure? The New York Times Daily actually had this long report that I found to be coping, I guess, with the situation a little bit by claiming that there is a real disagreement between the hardliners and the more moderate, more pragmatic elements. The more pragmatic elements that are trying to still maintain a more positive posture towards a ceasefire negotiation, whereas the hardliners are maybe even acting out at times. There was talk about how the IRGC might have actually even decided on their own to strike the U.S. assets in the region or strike at the ships to abide by the MOU. I don't think that's correct, but does this change that calculation? Does it make it impossible to determine that there is any kind of inconsistency, any kind of chaos or conflict inside of the Iranian governance structure right now?
Look, I think we have very little insight into what's happening inside the Iranian government. But I do think that there seems to be some sort of a inclination to assume that because we don't understand it. And we're very quick to go to those type of explanations. And again, sometimes they're probably true, but it doesn't mean that there's just some sort of inherent problem. I find it peculiar that we're so quick to come to that conclusion when there's such clear signs that there's massive chaos in the American government.
I was about to say, Iran didn't fire 12 generals, I don't think. Iran doesn't have leakers going to mainstream news and sidestepping the security meetings that they're having right now to basically advance the warning signs that we're running out of interceptors.
Yeah, exactly. And you don't have a situation there in which they have like an intelligence service that leaks that type of information that completely contradicts what the government is saying, etc. Now, some of that is normal, but we are in a truly chaotic situation these days with the manner that this current administration is running things. But I do think like there is a reality one has to recognize, and it shouldn't be surprising. This is why I think some of these reportings are a little bit odd. Why are you surprised that in a situation of war, it is the IRGC that has the upper hand? It is the generals that in a state of war actually tend to have the strongest voices, not the diplomats. Or the idea that, so for instance, there were negotiations about 2-3 weeks ago before you had a full collapse of the MOU. And it was in Muscat. The American side actually didn't really show up. So it was done by the Omanis and the Iranians. And the Iranian foreign minister essentially was negotiating a text, a joint statement by the Omanis. He seemed to have felt that he had the mandate for it, went back to Tehran by phone and got it nixed. And, apparently he couldn't sell it to Tehran. And then the question is, well, how could they overrule the foreign minister? Of course they overrule the foreign minister. The foreign minister doesn't make these decisions at the end of the day. You had a similar situation in which Kushner and Witkoff were in Geneva, negotiated a deal with Iranians through the help of the Omanis back in February. And even told the Iranians that they are very confident that Trump is going to like this deal, went back and Trump said no. And instead started a war 24 hours later.
Perfidy.
No one has said that, how is it possible that Witkoff could be overruled? Of course he can be overruled. He's not the president. And currently the situation in Iran is not that the foreign minister is running the foreign policy. It is the government as a whole. And within that government, clearly the IRGC and the military are having the upper hand because they're at war.
Yeah. The Supreme Leader Trump has the final say on these decisions. And perhaps there's someone even above him that is capable of changing his mind. And that man is Benjamin Netanyahu, and he's currently in Washington, D.C. I wanted to hear what your perspective is. Like, obviously, there is this real crisis. CSIS has reported that the standoff munition stockpile has diminished dramatically. The interceptor stockpiles have diminished dramatically, where the current assessment is that we do not have enough interceptors, PAC-3s, and THAAD missiles to potentially wage any war with our peer or near peer adversaries. I think it's worse than that. I suspect that it's actually not about a potential crisis in the future, but the real crisis that's taking place in the Gulf right now. I don't think we have enough to even go through a long and extended conflict with Iran. So now there's 2 points of pressure. The markets, obviously, being the first point of pressure, the energy markets, and the munitions. And it seems to me that that is the real reason why Trump has not gone through an additional escalation, and instead is demonstrating some semblance of restraint. Do you think Benjamin Netanyahu is capable of convincing him otherwise, especially when reporting shows that he's frustrated with the Pickaxe Mountain targeting that obviously came from the Israeli side as another opportunity, a lifeline to continue striking Iran, to give Trump and the Western media another target that Trump could focus on?
Yeah, look, first of all, regarding the interceptors, it's precisely because of that, because these are not mysteries. I mean, these numbers in this, the audit of it was very clear from the outset. So the only way going back to war really could work was if it was a new plan with some new intelligence and some new ability, capacity, some new tactic strategy that would ensure a victory in very short order. Because if it was dragging out, then yes, this problem with the interceptors would very quickly rear its head. And this is part of the reason I'm so surprised as to why Trump really restarted this, because I expected that if he's actually going to restart this war, he must have a plan. He must have a new technology. He must have a new intel. And it appears that he had absolutely none of them. And instead, some haphazard bombings in the south of Iran eventually would have brought about some new situation. So it's still a mystery to me how this decision actually was made, because there's not even a semblance of some sort of a strategy or theory of change, theory of how this could succeed. So the interceptor problem has always been available. It's always been known. We saw it back in 2025, in which the Israelis started asking for a ceasefire after 9 days or 10 days of fighting because they were running low. 10 days. And that was when the US was providing a tremendous amount of support for them as well. So it's not a new problem in any way, shape, or form. Is it the reason why he's showing restraint? In many ways, I think it is. The question is, why wasn't that same factor present to make him decide not to do this in the first place?
Maybe it's because the military is less woke this time around, even less woke than before. Because pre-MOU, Pete Hegseth said they're going to start, being less woke. And maybe post-MOU, they're going to be even less woke than the past. Have you factored in the secret weapon?
Yeah, I think there is an argument to be made that the president was so frustrated for a variety of reasons that he was just, screw this diplomacy, I want to see a bombing campaign. And you didn't have people in the military or around him that were willing to say, look, understand your anger, but this is not going to work. That Trump was simply not receptive to that. And he wouldn't be until he had proven to himself that this won't work, which happened about 7 to 8 days into this war. Yeah. And as a result, now he's more susceptible to that article, which then comes to your other question, which is, can Netanyahu nevertheless shift it around? I think there is one thing that the Israelis likely tried yesterday, and I think Netanyahu hinted at it publicly by saying that they came in with some new ideas.
Oh, God.
And I think what this may suggest is that the U.S. military itself is not coming up with any more ideas at this point, because none of them are good, and they know that this is not going to go anywhere. So they're not going to put bad options in front of Trump. But that means that there's a bit of a vacuum there when it comes to military ideas, and Trump has probably rejected a lot of them. And the Israelis may come up with another one of these spectacular ideas that look good on paper or look good in Trump's eyes, but have no relationship with reality just as much as their previous idea, which is starting this entire war in the first place, had a very, very bizarre relationship with reality.
As far as new ideas goes, I mean, the old idea is obviously the last remaining step on the escalation ladder from the American side, which is a ground invasion of the coastal islands and maybe even the Iranian coast. Now, of course, this is a spectacular failure that's imminent. A lot of military casualties. Trump's also very reluctant to go the full distance and actually put boots on the ground. He has consistently refused to do so in the past. So is there any chance that the administration tries to fight their way out of this, by your estimation, considering that it is kind of the last remaining option, because we've been doing the same thing over and over again? It's very clear that an aerial bombardment campaign is not going to create regime change at all. and America's not even gaining sufficient leverage over Iran in the process. And every day that this continues, Iran is actually gaining additional leverage over the oil markets.
So I wouldn't even concede the idea that this is an option, unless Trump, the people around him, and the military are willing to accept thousands of American casualties and killed, because that is what this would be. And they know that. They know that already back in the first round of this war, in which they looked at those options and ultimately decided not to do it. So again, if you were to do it, either it's because you're completely desperate, or because you have some new strategy, some new intel, some new capability that changes the equation. Because it has been looked upon numerous times, and it doesn't look good in any way, shape, or form. Can you take an island? Yes. Can you keep it? Yes. What is the cost of that? Immense. What is the strategic utility of it? Very limited. Does it change the picture? No. You're just positioning yourself in a stationary way that allows the Iranians to rain missiles on you, and you cannot force protect. You can provide force protection for the troops under those circumstances in an effective manner. So it would be a lot of people killed for absolutely nothing. That was the reality in the first round. I don't see anything that suggests that that is not the reality today. If the belief is that this bombing of southern Iran has reduced Iran's ability to close the strait, remember, this is exactly what was tried with the Houthis in February of 2025.
Yeah.
When Waltz and others convinced Trump to do that. And after 9 weeks, he stopped. And I don't think he's even mentioned the word Yemen since then.
Yeah, no, he said famously, the Houthis got hands. Like he literally said, they're brave fighters. They're really tough fighters.
Exactly. And I spoke to folks at the Pentagon at the time who were saying that, they were stunned by how quickly the Houthis immediately dug up missiles, fixed the different silos or, entry points in which the missiles were. And the Iranians are doing exactly the same thing. And, at the end of the day, it's probably the Iranians that trained the Houthis on this. So if it didn't work against the Houthis that are far less dug in, far less resources, have not had this strategy for that long, whereas the Iranians have been preparing for this since the mid-1990s, I just don't buy for a second that this 13-day campaign has achieved more against the Iranians than what 9 weeks did against the Houthis.
What level of knowledge do we have over the Houthi ballistic munitions and drone procurement capabilities? Because from what I understand, they are still significantly reliant on trying to create an air bridge between Iran, and this is part of the puzzle for them. We don't know what do we even know what depth of stockpiles they have in terms of carrying out a continuous blockade over an extended period of time? Because I assume that their reluctance to enter the theater of conflict and close the Bab el-Mandeb Strait wasn't necessarily because they're a totally sovereign actor here, but more so because of the limitations that they acknowledge. But perhaps I'm wrong, and I wanted to know if you have additional information on that.
I don't have an answer to that. My suspicion would be, however, that, first of all, they were made self-sufficient far earlier, meaning that they know how to build this stuff on their own now. In fact, I was told that they had even improved on some of the drones and were now reversing that. Essentially, the intelligence of technological flow was going from the Houthis to the Iranians.
Yeah, we saw that. Sorry to cut you off, but we saw that with the F-35. They were the ones who first used the loitering drones against the F-35 and almost successfully struck an F-35, which was shocking when it was revealed in the New York Times. I thought it was fake. So they definitely have improved. I just don't know how deep their facilities are, both literally deep as far as like bunkered down, but also like how many munitions they have.
Yeah. Again, and I don't have the answer to that, but my suspicion would be is that they were never in a position in which that had been depleted by the time the Saudi-Iranian normalization occurred. They have the technology, remember they're importing this stuff in small parts rather than as whole. And as a result, I think it would be rather safe to say that they certainly have the capacity to carry this on for some time. How long, I don't know. But I think we should also recognize that there seems to be a connection now in which any manner in which a conflict between Saudi and Yemen would become full-blown would also then entail a conflict between the Iraqi militias in Iraq and Yemen and Saudi Arabia, which then also changes the equation somewhat.
And I think that we're there right now, right? I mean, that's what it seems to be happening currently, because on the other side, while America has not retaliated against Iran directly, there was a joint U.S.-Saudi strike that took place against Iraq, the Iraqi militias. What does that say about the theater of conflict expanding?
Well, I think this was most likely a warning to essentially suggest that if the Saudis go in that direction, it will not just be with the Houthis, it will also be with the Iraqi militias. And by the way, there were elements of that before as well, in which some of the attacks on Saudi Arabia actually came from the north, from Iraq rather than from Yemen itself. Now, are we fully there? No, we're not fully there, but I think we are inching there. I think they're showcasing their capability, and the Saudis and the US are showcasing what they're capable and willing to do in return. And we saw with that strike, I think there were about 20 people killed, including 5 IRGC officers in Iraq. So we're seeing a horizontal escalation that goes beyond what we saw in the previous round of this war. And some of the nightmare scenarios that were avoided, such as the Houthis coming in and closing the straits there, Bab el-Mandeb, is now, at least they hinted at it very clearly. They've shot at ships, and I think there's a recognition that they have a capability, at least for a period of time, of doing so, which is a very, very dangerous situation. And then you also have a potential, and I wrote about this on Substack in our Responsible Statecraft, that you may also have the Ukrainians trying to open up a northern frontier, because they struck an Iranian ship in the Caspian Sea, showcasing their ability to use long-range drones, because that was a long-range drone that struck that. And I think it took the Iranians by surprise as well. And in the worst scenario, in my view, it's not just them showcasing what they can do. It's not just them, hinting to the U.S. what it can help the U.S. with, if the U.S. is more helpful to Ukraine in Russia, against Russia, or that they're just trying to extract the cost on the Iranians for the support Iran has provided Russia. But rather that this may actually be something bigger, which is to merge the two battlefields, to make the two wars one. And by that, push the U.S. into something even Biden resisted, which was to get into a direct confrontation with Russia.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's unbelievably stupid. And I think that it's a very risky maneuver, especially considering, and I want to hear your take on this, any extension of the Iranian conflict actually plays against Ukraine's immediate interests of self-defense. Zelensky has asked for 300 PAC-3 missiles earlier today, when it's very clear that we're panic shipping. We've deferred a lot of these Patriot systems that were supposed to be shipped to other allies. We've deferred those transfers specifically so we can hurry them to the Gulf region, and even then we're depleting those munitions. So there's no PAC-3s that are coming to Ukraine in this situation, which makes it a lot easier for Vladimir Putin to, especially as temperatures get colder, to strike with ease at a lot of these energy facilities and leave Ukraine and the civilian population of Ukraine without heat in the cold winter. So I don't understand why. I mean, I understand why he's doing it. It seems like he's trying to merge the conflict, as you said, and to make himself seem more valuable to Trump. And unfortunately, because Trump is stupid, he has to do stupid things to make himself seem more valuable to Trump as an asset against Iran. Do you see that theater expanding as well on the Ukrainian front, or do you think that this was a first strike and that they're going to go back to diplomacy somehow with Iran?
So we've seen some diplomatic activity between Iran and the Ukrainians, which appear to have occurred immediately after Zelensky's meeting with Trump at the White House, in which the Ukrainian foreign minister essentially called up the Iranian foreign minister, appeared to have done some sort of an apology or acknowledgement of error, which then was accepted by the Iranians. And this appears to have been a diffusion of the situation. That in and of itself does not mean that the Ukrainians may have completely given up on this idea. It's just that, they showcase this, they're lowering temperature and maybe go up again at some point. Your argument is a very interesting one because I think it really reflects the risk. If the Ukrainians expand this, but don't get massive American support and involvement in its war against Russia, then this is absolutely a losing proposition. So it's a huge gamble, because then they're just overextending themselves at a point in which they can't afford to without getting the kind of return on investment that they're looking for. So it is a huge gamble. I can understand why the Ukrainians think that it's a gamble that potentially is worthwhile, because for the first time in a long time, I think Ukraine came to Washington not necessarily as someone asking for charity, but someone who was offering help. And that Trump may have been susceptible to that offer precisely because he's in such a self-inflicted predicament with Iran, in which he has no good military options and doesn't seem to have the patience or the good diplomatic options. Again, I'm not saying that this will happen. Some people are telling me it's inevitable. I'm not saying that it's a valid direction to go down. On the contrary, I would think it's very stupid. But I'm trying to see it from the perspective of those who would argue in favor. What is the logic that they're trying to see? And I think there is one. I'll add one other logic from the Israeli standpoint as to why I think they would be quite favorable towards this. One, it would prolong the Iran war, which is the Israeli interest, and they made that very clear. Two, the Europeans are involved in Ukraine, but they're not directly involved in the Iran war in the same way. This would bring them into that arena as well. And third, and perhaps most importantly, if these two wars merge, then you have a scenario in which you can reframe this conflict altogether. And then defeating Iran does not become something you do to defend Israel. It's something you do to defend Ukraine. And in the US in particular, mindful of how Israel has plummeted, its standing has plummeted in Washington. And the degree to which Democrats are opposed to the Iran war, but they're still very supportive of the idea of supporting Ukraine, it can shake things up in a bit that the Israelis may think is a bit unpredictable, but it could not possibly be worse than the situation the Israelis are facing right now.
Do you feel like that's connected with the likes of Laura Loomer, a Hasbarist, an ultra-Zionist, going to Ukraine, flying out to Ukraine and having a change of heart as she interviews Zelensky? I read that as a deliberate effort to merge both of these conflicts exactly in the same way that you're mentioning, in an effort to basically also improve the Israeli position by latching on to a much more bipartisan war, which is the continuation of the Ukrainian conflict, the Ukrainian defenses, especially at a time when Zelensky has also gained more leverage over Russia with its successive strikes on critical oil and energy infrastructure, partially with additional NATO involvement. That's how I read it. Do you feel the same way? And also, what do you feel about the mainstream laundering of the reputation of someone as unstable and as insane as Laura Loomer?
Let me start off with the first question. It certainly looks plausible because it was quite fascinating. I don't claim to understand how Loomer thinks and how she operates. She apparently thinks that she knows that about me. I can assure you that she doesn't. But it doesn't. It certainly.
We should be careful. She's trying to get us both deported. So
exactly. It certainly does appear that it would fit that logic. But again, I don't know the details of it, and I don't know exactly what is motivating her. But it is something that a lot of people have taken note of, that this sudden effort to, treat the two wars as if they're the same, as if, this rhetoric that we're fighting the same enemy, that is a very typical effort to try to expand the war in order to make it more winnable, particularly when you're stuck. I mean, it's no different from other problems. When faced with a problem, sometimes you have to make it bigger to resolve it. In this specific case, I don't think it does. I think it actually brings us closer to essentially a world war. It would end up being a scenario in which this war would take place on 3 continents, Europe, Asia, and Africa, because of the Red Sea. I think that would be an absolute disaster. But that does not mean that others do. They may see it as an opportunity.
Yeah. So there was one other question I wanted to ask you about the Iraqi strike capabilities, because obviously the Ansar Allah movement, allegedly, has also struck the Yanbu port, which is obviously the playing a pivotal role since the Strait of Hormuz has been closed. They've demonstrated that they have the willingness and capabilities of also striking Saudi Aramco facilities. This hasn't actually translated to the oil markets at all. Like the crude prices have not. The crude prices continue going down for some weird reason, even though the refinery is very clearly on fire. So I wanted to ask you, what's going on with the markets by your estimation? And 2, the Iraqi militias potentially striking a ship directly in the Red Sea, nearing the Suez Canal. What does that say about a potential oil and energy crisis in Europe, which is still, getting a lot of its needs met through the Suez Canal?
Yeah. So look, we remember 2019, the Saudi Aramco fields were struck. The Saudis, of course, point the finger to Iran. It does seem to be quite likely that actually there were Iranian drones. The Iranians were behind it, but it was shot by Iraqi militias in Iraq that were coming from the northwest. That capability is clearly there, and I think this is one of those options that if there is this type of a total war or full-scale war that Trump is toying with, his idea that it will be the thing that will work, reality is that the Iranians and their allies have counter-escalatory steps and measures at their disposal that would put the US and the entire global economy under tremendous amount of strain, far beyond what we have seen so far. And I have to say, when it comes to the oil market, I am stunned. I am shocked. Already back in the first round of this war, the prices were artificially low. And of course, we know that a lot of that was because of the use of the Strategic Petroleum Reserve. It was because of oral interventions into the market that Trump kept on doing, playing with their expectations. But
China
now
also cutting down their imports by half almost. Yeah,
certainly. Exactly. So there were a lot of different factors. How sustainable that is a different story. But my impression talking to folks there is that a lot of the folks in the market are just really relying on a degree of rationality, which I understand. I have to do the same thing when I do my analysis, but sometimes we just have to understand that rationality is not necessarily what is driving this. But they're just thinking there's no way we can continue doing this. And as a result, they have the expectation that oil is going to come down. And as a result, they're not panicking or actually even reacting to some of these things. And I think it may be a miscalculation because I think we're closer to that type of an escalation than the market seems to think we are.
As far as going back to Ukraine, my assessment is that Ukraine actually gained tremendous leverage with the successive strikes on critical oil and gas infrastructure deep inside of Russian territory. They were able to successfully strike tankers as well, Russian oil shipments as well. Do you feel as though this also creates additional pressure on the volatility of the energy markets, which then, ironically enough, would make it harder for Trump to continue waging war against Iran? Because it feels like there's a direct contradiction with the things that Ukraine is doing that is allowing them to gain tremendous leverage over Russia. I think this is the highest point that Ukraine has been at since, and the battle lines have not shifted, obviously. But I'm saying, like, as far as universalizing the cost for the Russian population, making them more angry, long lines at gas stations, Russia cutting diesel exports out of the country. All of this is, on the one hand, giving less of a timeline for Donald Trump in Iran, but also giving Ukraine a lot of additional leverage. I have maintained the position that this would be a perfect opportunity to try to pressure Vladimir Putin into a real long-standing ceasefire, not one that Vladimir Putin was dangling over Ukraine leading up to the Anchorage summit, which was very clearly Russia trying to sever ties between the United States and Ukraine, and even successfully getting to sever some ties between Ukraine and the United States, only to continue the war and make maximalist demands. Do you feel like Ukraine could entertain a ceasefire at this point? And do you think that there's any appetite from Zelensky to entertain some kind of ceasefire at this point, given that they're also trying to expand the theater of conflict?
Yeah, so I know too little about the war. I haven't been able to follow that at all for the last 6 or so months because of this other war, to be able to give you a more informed opinion on that. But I can tell you that the messaging that I seem to be picking up here in Washington with Zelensky's visit, it certainly is not one of going back to the negotiating table and finding a ceasefire. It is to take advantage of the current position that Ukrainians have to really push for far more American support and a stronger commitment to the U.S. to Ukraine. And Trump has really changed his tune on Ukraine in a rather dramatic way just in the last couple of weeks. And whether that actually is also connected to hints or suspicions of what the Ukrainians can do for Trump in Iran is unclear at this point, but that may very well be part of the puzzle.
Okay. Well, Trita Parsi, thank you so much for coming on. You have any parting thoughts, some final words, and also where can people find you?
They can find me at the Quincy Institute, which is quincyinst.org, on Substack, which is tritaparsi.substack.com, and at Twitter at tparsi.
All right. Thank you, Trita, for coming on.
Thank you so much.
Always
really
a wonderful experience.
Likewise. Talk to you soon. Thank you.
Bye. All right. That was Trita Parsi, the Quincy Institute, Executive Vice President of the Quincy Institute. Amazing guest as always. An endless well of knowledge on all things Iran. We are now going to get back to we're moving on from situation monitoring, at least for the time being. Decent interview would have been better if both of you were in tank tops. True. I'll hit him up next time. I'll be like, hey, can you show off that muscular physique for my audience? Y'all are insane. Here, this is what you deserve. I liked that the Trita Parsi interview was sandwiched between Lindsey Graham, coochie maxing, and ended with Benihana coochie maxing. I looked. This one is not as good because it doesn't show the dogs. Cooter mogging, you uncultured buffoon. Why are you like this? I'm just showing you how these people operate. Oh, there it is. Chat, is this real? Yes, it is. Financial Times reports U.S. commercial crude inventories dropped by 7.2 million barrels and the Strategic Petroleum Reserve fell by 3.8 million barrels. Refineries are running at 97% capacity to meet the high export demands in Asia and Europe, draining domestic stockpiles to precarious lows amid ongoing Middle East disruptions. Which can mean only one thing. Price of Brent crude goes down to $75. Fuck it. Brent crude to 75. It makes no sense. Who cares? Fuck it. We ball. None of this makes sense. We are going to materialize more. We are going to materialize more oil somehow through the process of alchemy, just like we are going to materialize more PAC-3s for Ukraine and all of our allies through the process also of alchemy. That's right. If you look at the markets, that's what they're signaling. As Jeffrey Sachs pointed to me over and over again the last time we had a conversation, the markets are absolute. They are tethered to reality. I don't know what reality. It doesn't feel like the reality that we're living in, but seemingly they're tethered. I believe in the markets, ladies and gentlemen. I am a capitalist after all. I'm an international shipping magnate. And therefore, it is my suspicion, it is my firmly held belief that the markets are tethered to reality, just not the one that we live in. You realize China has decreased its oil imports significantly enough to absorb much of the disruption in the Strait of Hormuz. I do realize that. I do realize that. Of course I realize that. I've covered it months before it became mainstream, the mainstream opinion. I covered it when Financial Times first reported on it. Everyone was dunking on them for saying that. However, there is no guarantee that China will maintain market stability. We don't know how deep their oil reserves are. It's possible that all these support aircraft took off from Prince Sultan because they were alerted to the attack on Riyadh and wanted to avoid potentially getting hit on the ground. If that's the case, then I don't think there will be strikes on Iran tonight. Dozen refuelers flying. American strikes will probably begin in the next hour or two. Confirmed Tom Holland is a HasanAbi head? Oh, I saw this.
It has been 10 years since you filmed Spider-Man Homecoming. You've been in Spider-Man films as long as we've been alive.
I'm going to say old in a different language. That's crazy.
That's crazy. I mean, in Canada, we ball. Canada's leverage. Trump drains America's emergency oil reserve as Canada supplies 63%